Before we talk about myths, aliens, or lost knowledge, we have to start with the most stubborn witnesses of all: bones. Not stories. Not legends. Not assumptions. Bones. Neanderthal skeletons are not subtle. When paleoanthropologists first uncovered them in the 19th century, the immediate reaction was confusion. These were not simply older humans. They were thicker, denser. The joints were massive. The muscle attachment points, especially in the shoulders, arms, hips, and thighs, were exaggerated in ways modern human skeletons almost never are. Neanderthals were not just stronger than Homo sapiens. They were built for strength as a default setting. Their long bones, particularly the femur and humerus, were wider relative to length, meaning they could withstand greater mechanical stress. The cross-sectional geometry of these bones suggests habitual loading far beyond what most modern humans experience, even athletes. This wasn't the result of occasional hard work. It was lifelong, continuous, and evolutionarily encoded. In practical terms, a Neanderthal didn't train to become strong. They were born into strength. Modern biomechanical modeling suggests that Neanderthals may have been 30 to 50% stronger than average modern humans in upper body pulling and pushing strength. Their grip strength alone may have rivaled that of today's strongest primates, approaching chimpanzee-level force output in some scenarios, though achieved through a very different anatomical pathway. And this is where things get interesting. Chimpanzees are strong because of muscle fiber composition, a higher proportion of fast-twitch fibers, and a nervous system optimized for explosive output. Humans, by contrast, traded raw strength for endurance, precision, and energy efficiency. Neanderthals appear to sit somewhere between these worlds, but closer to us than to chimps. They had human-like hands capable of fine manipulation. Human-like feet adapted for long-distance walking. Human-like vocal anatomy suggesting complex speech. And yet, their bodies tell a story of brute force woven into intelligence, not separated from it. This wasn't accidental. Neanderthals evolved in Ice Age Eurasia, a landscape of cold, scarcity, megafauna, and constant physical risk. Every hunt was close range. Every injury mattered. Survival favored individuals who could overpower prey, wrestle carcasses, drag loads, and endure trauma without modern medicine. Strength wasn't optional. It was cultural infrastructure. But raw power alone doesn't explain their success, or their mystery. Because when we look at their brains, we find something unexpected. Neanderthals had larger brains than modern humans on average, not by a little, but by about 10%. Yet size alone doesn't equal intelligence. What matters is organization, energy use, and chemical signaling. And here, the trail forks. Their brains were shaped differently, elongated rather than globular. Their visual cortex was proportionally larger, suggesting heightened visual processing, possibly adapted for low-light environments and spatial awareness. This may have come at the cost of regions associated with social networking and abstract symbolic processing, though that trade-off remains hotly debated. What we do know is this: Neanderthals buried their dead. They cared for injured group members who could not hunt. They used pigments. They made tools that required planning and knowledge transmission across generations. These are not the behaviors of a dim species. They are the behaviors of a different intelligence strategy. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If Neanderthals were stronger than us, if their brains were as large or larger, if they survived harsh conditions that would have crushed early Homo sapiens, why aren't they still here? And why does modern humanity, physically weaker yet globally dominant, carry Neanderthal DNA inside our cells, as if fragments of that lost strength were absorbed, not erased? To answer that, we have to step back. Back beyond Neanderthals. Back beyond Homo sapiens. Back into the branching maze of primate evolution itself. Because the story of strength, intelligence, and origin does not begin with us. And it may not have begun on Earth at all. To understand why Neanderthals were stronger than us, and why we ultimately outlasted them, we have to strip evolution down to its most basic currency: energy. Every primate body is an engine. Muscle is expensive tissue. Brain tissue is even more expensive. Evolution does not optimize for greatness. It optimizes for survival efficiency under local conditions. And somewhere along the branching tree of primates, three radically different strategies emerged. The ape strategy: explosive power. Chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans share a muscular architecture that modern humans often misunderstand. Apes are not strong because they are bigger or more muscular in appearance. They are strong because their muscles are wired differently at the cellular level. Their muscle fibers contain a much higher proportion of fast-twitch fibers, the kind that generate massive force quickly but fatigue rapidly. Their tendons and skeletal leverage also favor torque over endurance. A chimpanzee can outpull, outclimb, and outgrip a human several times its size, but only for short bursts. This is strength designed for arboreal locomotion, sudden violence, territorial dominance, short, chaotic encounters. Apes live in a world of ambush, grappling, and immediate consequence. Their nervous systems prioritize instant force, not long-term efficiency. But this comes with a cost. Fast-twitch muscles burn fuel rapidly. Apes tire quickly. They cannot travel long distances efficiently, and they overheat easily when running. Their strength is incredible, but it is localized in time. The Neanderthal strategy: sustained power. Neanderthals occupy a rare middle ground in primate evolution. They did not inherit the ape model wholesale, nor did they adopt the extreme endurance specialization of modern humans. Instead, they evolved hybrid musculature. Neanderthal muscles appear to have had higher fast-twitch fiber ratios than modern humans, greater overall muscle mass relative to body size, stronger tendon insertions optimized for heavy loading, a metabolism tuned for cold climates and protein-heavy diets. This made them extraordinarily capable at repeated high-force tasks. Not a single explosive movement, but many powerful movements in succession. Think thrusting spears into megafauna, dragging carcasses across snow, breaking bones for marrow, climbing rugged terrain under heavy loads. Neanderthals weren't sprinters. They weren't marathoners either. They were bruisers with stamina. Cold environments amplified this advantage. Lower temperatures reduce overheating, allowing larger, more muscular bodies to function efficiently. Neanderthals' stocky frames minimized heat loss, while their muscle density generated warmth through work. In Ice Age Eurasia, this body plan was devastatingly effective. For tens of thousands of years. The human strategy: endurance above all. Modern Homo sapiens made a radical trade. We gave up strength. Our muscles shifted toward slow-twitch fibers, which generate less force but can operate for hours without fatigue. Our tendons, especially the Achilles, became biological springs, storing and releasing energy with each step. Our sweat glands multiplied. Our hair thinned. Our bodies became long, narrow, and thermally inefficient in the cold, but superb in the heat. Humans became the best persistence hunters on Earth. We could follow prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We could migrate across continents. We could carry information, not just muscle, over distance. Strength moved out of the body, and into tools, coordination, and planning. This shift also freed energy. Less muscle mass meant lower baseline caloric needs. That energy could be diverted to the brain, particularly regions associated with language, social bonding, abstraction, and long-term planning. Humans didn't overpower the world. We outlasted it. A critical divergence. Here is the key insight. Neanderthals evolved for local dominance. Humans evolved for global adaptability. In stable but harsh environments, Neanderthals thrived. But when climates oscillated rapidly, when ecosystems fractured and prey patterns shifted, raw power became a liability. A large, muscular body requires consistent calories. A specialized hunter suffers when specialization fails. Humans, weaker but flexible, could pivot. Different prey, different tools, different strategies, different social structures. Over time, endurance beat power. But evolution rarely erases what it can reuse. And that's why modern humans still carry Neanderthal genes associated with muscle density, pain tolerance, immune response, cold adaptation, fragments of a lost strength still whispering in our cells. Which raises a deeper question. If evolution can sculpt such different bodies from a shared primate ancestor, if muscle, metabolism, and endurance can be rewritten so dramatically, what else could have been altered? And by whom? Because when we move from muscles to brains, the divergence becomes even stranger. When the first Neanderthal skulls were reconstructed, scientists were caught off guard. These weren't small, primitive brains. They were large, often larger than those of modern humans. For decades, this fact sat uncomfortably inside a story that wanted Neanderthals to be inferior. Bigger brains were supposed to mean greater intelligence. And yet Neanderthals disappeared, while Homo sapiens inherited the planet. So something didn't add up. The answer, it turns out, isn't about brain size. It's about how the brain was wired, what it was optimized for, and how it burned energy. Shape matters more than size. Neanderthal brains averaged around 1,450 to 1,600 cubic centimeters, compared to modern humans' average of 1,300 to 1,400 cubic centimeters. But their brains were shaped differently. Neanderthal skulls were long and low, with an elongated brain case. Modern human skulls are rounded and globular. This difference reflects changes in brain organization, not intelligence ranking. Neanderthals devoted more brain volume to visual processing, spatial awareness, motor coordination. This makes sense. They lived in low-light Ice Age environments, hunted large animals at close range, navigated rugged terrain, and relied on precise physical timing. Their brains were tuned for immediate sensory-motor integration. Modern humans, by contrast, expanded regions associated with symbolic thought, language, social cognition, abstract planning. This wasn't smarter in a universal sense. It was different priorities. Energy is the hidden constraint. Brains are among the most energy-hungry organs in the body. Modern human brains consume roughly 20 to 25% of our resting metabolic energy, despite making up only 2% of body mass. This is an extraordinary evolutionary expense. Neanderthals had larger brains, larger bodies, greater muscle mass. That's a triple energy burden. To support this, they relied heavily on protein and fat-rich diets, dominated by large game. When ecosystems were stable, this worked. When climates fluctuated and megafauna declined, the metabolic math became unforgiving. Humans, with slightly smaller brains and lighter bodies, could survive on broader diets. Fish, plants, small game, scavenging. Efficiency, not intelligence, became the deciding factor. Neurochemistry, the quiet difference. Emerging genetic evidence suggests Neanderthal brains may have operated under different neurochemical balances. Several Neanderthal-derived genes in modern humans are associated with pain perception, stress response, sleep cycles, emotional reactivity. This suggests Neanderthals may have experienced the world more viscerally, with heightened sensory input, stronger emotional responses, and a nervous system tuned for survival under constant physical threat. This is not a weakness. It's a different mode of consciousness. Less abstract, more embodied, more immediate. Modern humans, meanwhile, appear to have evolved neurochemical profiles that favor longer attention spans, reduced stress reactivity, extended childhood learning periods, traits that support storytelling, teaching, coalition building, and culture accumulation across generations. The intelligence myth. Here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no single scale of intelligence. Neanderthals were likely better than us at navigating hostile terrain, reading animal behavior, physical problem-solving, surviving injury and trauma. Humans became better at sharing ideas across large groups, creating symbolic meaning, coordinating strangers, transmitting knowledge rapidly. One intelligence was situational dominance. The other was cumulative civilization. And that difference, small at first, compounded over time. A strange discontinuity. But when we step back and look at the timeline, something odd appears. Human brains didn't just gradually shift shape. Around 70,000 to 40,000 years ago, there was a rapid explosion of symbolic art, complex language, long-distance trade, cultural innovation. This is often called the cognitive revolution. And it happened fast. Too fast, some argue, for slow genetic drift alone. Which brings us to a controversial question. Was this purely natural selection? Or was something introduced? Because when we compare modern human cognition not just to Neanderthals, but to all other primates, the leap is extreme. And evolution, usually conservative, rarely jumps without pressure or intervention. When evolution works the way textbooks promise, it leaves a clean trail. Small changes accumulate slowly. Populations diverge gradually. Fossils stack neatly, layer upon layer. But human evolution does not look like that. It looks fractured, crowded, abrupt, and in several places it looks unfinished, as if pages were torn from the record. A forest, not a ladder. For most of the 20th century, human evolution was taught as a ladder. Apes, early humans, modern humans. That model collapsed as soon as the fossil record filled in. What we actually see is a dense evolutionary forest. Australopithecus species overlapping in time. Multiple Homo species coexisting. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, Homo naledi, all alive at roughly the same time as early Homo sapiens. This was not a single march forward. It was an experiment running in parallel. And Neanderthals were not a side branch far removed from us. They split from our lineage only about 550,000 to 765,000 years ago, an eye blink in evolutionary time, which makes the differences between us curious. The missing transitions. Here's where the discomfort begins. When we compare Neanderthal skeletal robustness, human cranial globularity, Denisovan genetic uniqueness, we don't always find clean transitional forms connecting them. Instead, we see sudden appearances of traits, abrupt regional specialization, long periods of stability followed by rapid change. Evolution can do this, but usually under intense pressure. What pressure, exactly, reshaped the human brain so quickly? Climate alone doesn't fully explain it. Tool use doesn't either. Neanderthals used complex tools for hundreds of thousands of years without triggering a cognitive explosion. Something else changed. Interbreeding without blending. Another anomaly. Interbreeding without homogenization. Modern humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans repeatedly. This should have blurred the species boundaries. Instead, we see selective retention. Modern humans kept immune system genes, skin and hair adaptations, high-altitude tolerance, but lost, or never acquired, most Neanderthal skeletal and neurological traits. It's as if certain features were filtered out. Natural selection can do that, but the pattern looks oddly curated. Not random. Ghosts in the genome. Then there are the ghost hominins. Geneticists have detected DNA in modern African populations that does not match any known hominin fossil. These lineages diverged hundreds of thousands of years ago, and then vanished without leaving bones behind. Anatomically invisible. Genetically undeniable. This suggests entire human-like populations lived, interbred, and disappeared without a trace in the fossil record. How many branches did we never meet? And why does our lineage appear to have absorbed fragments rather than merged fully with those around it? An uncomfortable pattern. When we step back, a pattern emerges. Neanderthals, physically dominant, locally adapted, cognitively embodied. Denisovans, genetically distinct, technologically obscure, environmentally extreme. Homo sapiens, physically weaker, globally adaptive, symbolically explosive. Only one lineage developed. Recursive language. Rapid cumulative culture. Abstract mathematics. Long-term technological acceleration. And it did so suddenly. Evolution usually experiments widely. Here, it seems to have converged narrowly. The question evolution doesn't like. This does not prove interference. But it creates space for the question. If an external intelligence wanted to modify a primate species, not to make it strongest, but to make it scalable, they would favor endurance over power, cooperation over dominance, symbolism over instinct, technology over biology. They would create a species that builds tools instead of bodies, lives everywhere instead of perfectly somewhere, rewrites environments rather than adapts to them. That species would look exactly like us, and it would emerge alongside other hominins, then quietly replace them, not by conquest, but by outcompeting reality itself. At some point, the question stops being sensational and becomes technical. Not, did aliens create humans? But, could directed evolution explain the anomalies we see? Because when stripped of mythology, the alien hypothesis is not about gods descending from the sky. It's about intervention. Subtle, incremental, buried inside biology. What directed evolution actually means. Directed evolution does not require futuristic laboratories or dramatic rewrites of DNA. In its simplest form, it means selecting an existing organism, introducing targeted genetic changes, allowing natural selection to do the rest. Modern humans already do this with bacteria, plants, and animals. We don't design organisms from scratch. We nudge them. An advanced civilization, millions of years ahead, would not need to manufacture humans wholesale. They would only need to identify a promising primate lineage and alter a few control systems. Brain development timing, neural connectivity patterns, metabolic efficiency, social cognition thresholds, small changes, massive downstream effects. Why humans, not Neanderthals? If an external intelligence were involved, Neanderthals would have been a poor choice. They were highly specialized, physically dominant, environmentally constrained. Humans, by contrast, were physically weak, behaviorally flexible, cognitively plastic. From an engineering perspective, humans were a general-purpose platform. You don't upgrade the strongest machine. You upgrade the one that can be repurposed endlessly. The strange timing problem. The most suspicious feature is not that humans changed. It's how fast. For hundreds of thousands of years, stone tools barely evolved. Then suddenly, symbolic art, complex language, mathematics, astronomy, long-distance trade. This is not a smooth curve. It's a step function. Something changed the rate of innovation itself. Once symbolic thought reached a critical threshold, culture began evolving faster than biology. Humans escaped the slow constraints of genetic evolution entirely. That escape velocity moment is rare, possibly unique. Genetic markers without obvious purpose. Modern humans carry genes whose advantages are not immediately obvious. Genes that increase brain energy consumption. Genes that extend childhood dependency. Genes that increase anxiety and existential awareness. These traits are costly. They only make sense in a species expected to learn for decades, transmit abstract knowledge, build long-term civilizations. Natural selection can produce this, but it usually does so gradually. Here, it appears preloaded. The zoo hypothesis reframed. The classic zoo hypothesis suggests aliens observe us without interference. But what if the observation phase came after intervention? What if humans were never meant to be visited again? Because the experiment was already complete? A self-modifying species doesn't need supervision. It just needs time. The silence problem. If humans were engineered, why is there no clear evidence? Because successful intervention looks exactly like natural evolution. No signatures. No markers saying, made elsewhere. Just a species that doesn't quite fit its neighbors. Which is precisely what we see. Where the hypothesis fails. This is important. The alien hypothesis explains. Sudden cognitive acceleration. Human outlier status. Nonlinear cultural growth. But it fails to explain. Why only one species was uplifted? Why intervention stopped? Why the process was so risky and indirect? And there is a simpler explanation. Evolution sometimes gets lucky. Rare feedback loops can trigger runaway intelligence without outside help. The universe does not forbid miracles. It only makes them statistically rare. The final tension. So we are left in a narrow space between explanations. Either humans are the product of a rare but natural evolutionary cascade, or we are the result of a gentle push, long forgotten. Both lead to the same outcome. A species that is physically weak, cognitively explosive, environmentally transformative. A species that builds tools instead of bodies. A species that looks at the stars and wonders not if it belongs there, but whether it has been there before. If we remove aliens from the equation, if we assume no external hand ever touched our genome, we are still left with a problem. Human intelligence is not just advanced. It is unstable. It grows faster the more it exists. And that behavior is rare in biology. Evolution usually moves slowly. Most traits evolve under dampening forces. Too much speed? You burn calories. Too much brain? You starve. Too much curiosity? You take risks and die. Evolution prefers balance, which makes Homo sapiens unusual because our defining trait, cumulative intelligence, feeds on itself. Knowledge creates tools. Tools change environments. Changed environments reward more knowledge. This is a positive feedback loop, not a stable equilibrium. And once it starts, it's very hard to stop. The language ignition point. The strongest candidate for this runaway process is recursive language. Not just communication, but language that can describe hypotheticals, futures, abstractions, other minds. Once a species can teach concepts rather than behaviors, evolution accelerates beyond genetics. A child does not need to rediscover fire. They inherit it mentally. Neanderthals likely had language, but perhaps not fully recursive, symbolic language at the same scale or speed. A small difference here would create massive divergence over time. Social scaling changes everything. Most primates top out at small group sizes. Humans broke that limit. We evolved the ability to trust strangers, share myths, obey abstract rules, coordinate across thousands, then millions. These are not biological instincts alone. They are cognitive hacks, software running on primate hardware. Once groups scaled, innovation scaled with them. One idea, multiplied across thousands of minds, becomes a civilization. Fire, cooking, and brain energy. Fire quietly rewrote human evolution. Cooking pre-digests food, increasing caloric availability. This allowed smaller guts, larger brains, shorter digestion time. More energy went upward, to the brain. Neanderthals used fire extensively, but humans may have used it more flexibly, adapting cooking styles to diverse environments. Energy efficiency again favored adaptability over raw strength. Childhood as an evolutionary weapon. Humans have an unusually long childhood. This is a vulnerability, unless culture fills the gap. A long childhood allows neural plasticity, language immersion, social conditioning, skill accumulation. Instead of being born finished, humans are born programmable. That makes each generation smarter than the last, without genetic change. Why Neanderthals didn't tip over? Neanderthals had intelligence, but they lived in smaller groups, harsher environments, lower population densities. Their innovations didn't spread fast enough. Human ideas went viral. Once population density crossed a threshold, culture became self-sustaining. Neanderthals were outpaced, not outthought. The chilling conclusion. This explanation is less comforting than aliens, because it means nothing special was planned. No destiny, no design, just a rare alignment of fire, language, social trust, endurance bodies, flexible minds. That alignment turned a weak primate into a planetary force. And it could happen again, somewhere else. Or already has. For most of life on Earth, strength wins. Bigger jaws, thicker armor, faster bursts of muscle. Evolution rewards bodies that can overpower other bodies. Until, abruptly, it doesn't. Because at a certain threshold, intelligence becomes a force multiplier that makes raw muscle obsolete. Tools are stored strength. A stone hand axe does not tire. A spear does not weaken with age. A trap works while you sleep. When humans began externalizing force into tools, muscle stopped being the primary limiter. Strength moved outside the body, where it could be shared, refined, and improved without genetic change. A physically weak human with a spear could kill an animal no primate could overpower bare-handed. And once weapons existed, physical dominance lost its evolutionary monopoly. Neanderthals and the cost of strength. Neanderthal bodies were optimized for close-range violence and direct engagement. That worked, until it didn't. Close contact is dangerous. Injuries accumulate. Bones show healed fractures, crushed ribs, broken limbs. Neanderthals survived trauma, but survival has a cost. Humans shifted toward distance weapons, traps, coordination, risk avoidance. They killed without wrestling. Intelligence replaced bravery. Endurance meets technology. Human endurance mattered, but not for fighting. It mattered for transporting tools, maintaining social networks, exploring new territories. A species that can walk for days carrying knowledge outpaces a species that can fight intensely for minutes. Technology travels farther than muscle. The illusion of human weakness. Humans appear weak because we measure strength biologically. But our true strength is collective and cumulative. One human is fragile. 1,000 humans with shared knowledge are unstoppable. Neanderthals were individually formidable. Humans were networked. The quiet replacement. Neanderthals were not conquered in a single war. They were slowly replaced by a system that scaled better. Better coordination. Faster innovation. Broader diets. Lower injury rates. Muscle loss to math. The body becomes optional. Once intelligence externalizes survival, bodies can shrink. Muscles can soften. Lifespans can extend. Modern humans no longer need to be strong to survive. That trade-off began tens of thousands of years ago. And it hasn't stopped. If strength alone could build civilization, the planet would already belong to apes. Chimpanzees are stronger than us. Gorillas dwarf us in raw power. Orangutans possess astonishing grip strength and spatial intelligence. And yet, none of them crossed the threshold. To understand why, we have to stop comparing ability and start comparing constraints. Chimpanzees, intelligence without scale. Chimpanzees are the closest living relatives to humans. They use tools. They plan. They deceive. They teach. In controlled environments, chimps can learn symbolic systems, use simple language interfaces, solve multi-step problems. So why didn't they build culture that compounds? Because chimpanzee intelligence is socially brittle. Their societies are highly territorial, dominance-driven, prone to violence within and between groups. Knowledge does not flow freely. A clever chimp does not benefit the group long-term if dominance hierarchies suppress sharing. Innovation dies with the individual. Human societies did something radical. They decoupled intelligence from dominance. Ideas could outlive their creators. Bonobos, cooperation without pressure. Bonobos offer the opposite problem. They are highly social, cooperative, emotionally intelligent. They resolve conflict through bonding rather than violence. They share food. They form stable groups. But bonobos live in an environment with low survival pressure. Abundant resources reduce the need for innovation. There is no incentive to push intelligence into dangerous territory. Evolution rarely advances where comfort persists. Bonobos are peaceful, but static. Gorillas, strength that locks you in. Gorillas are built like biological tanks. Their bodies are optimized for massive strength, herbivorous efficiency, stable territories. But their size limits endurance, range, population density. Large bodies require large, stable ecosystems. Gorillas cannot scatter, experiment, and recombine ideas across vast distances. Their strength anchors them. Humans escaped by becoming smaller, lighter, and more mobile. Orangutans, intelligence in isolation. Orangutans are startlingly intelligent. They use complex tools, plan future actions, display advanced problem-solving. But they live largely alone. No dense social networks means no cumulative culture. An orangutan can invent, but not propagate. Civilization requires many minds overlapping in time. The missing combination. Every primate has pieces of the puzzle. Chimps, intelligence plus tools. Bonobos, cooperation. Gorillas, strength. Orangutans, foresight. Only humans assembled all four, and added endurance, language, and symbolic abstraction. And we did it under constant pressure. Scarcity, migration, climate instability. Pressure forces traits to merge. A narrow evolutionary gate. This suggests something unsettling. Human-level intelligence is not a smooth destination. It's a narrow gate. Miss it slightly and you get strong but stagnant species, smart but violent ones, cooperative but unambitious ones. Only one path leads to runaway culture, and it is easy to miss. The implication: if intelligence is this fragile, then the universe may be full of strong species that never build tools, smart species that never scale, cooperative species that never innovate. Civilization may be rarer than life itself. Which brings us back, again, to the question of origin. If the path is so narrow, how did we walk it? Neanderthals did not vanish cleanly. They did not end with a final battle, a last winter, or a single extinction moment. They ended inside us. Modern humans outside Africa carry between 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, and in some populations, traces of Denisovan DNA as well. These are not neutral remnants. They are not fossil dust trapped in the genome. They are functional, and they tell us something important. The genes we didn't reject. When two populations interbreed, most genetic material is lost within a few generations. What remains is what works. The Neanderthal genes that survived were not random. They are disproportionately linked to immune system function, skin and hair physiology, fat storage and metabolism, pain perception and injury tolerance, cold adaptation. In other words, survival traits. Neanderthals were specialists in endurance under physical hardship. When modern humans moved into Ice Age Eurasia, those genes mattered. We didn't replace Neanderthals. We absorbed their advantages. Strength without the body. Interestingly, many Neanderthal genes influence how muscles respond, not how big they grow. This suggests that while we lost Neanderthal skeletal robustness, we retained improved muscle efficiency under strain, greater tolerance for repetitive stress, altered recovery and inflammation responses. The strength shifted inward, less visible, still useful. Pain, risk, and survival psychology. Several Neanderthal-derived variants are associated with higher pain thresholds, heightened threat sensitivity, faster stress responses. These traits would be liabilities in modern office environments, but they are priceless in survival contexts. This may explain why some people react intensely to stress, are hyper-aware of danger, feel deeply embodied emotions. These are not flaws. They are echoes. Immunity from another world. Neanderthals lived in Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years before humans arrived. They faced pathogens we had never encountered. When humans interbred with them, we acquired immune defenses adapted to those environments. Without Neanderthal genes, early Homo sapiens may not have survived long enough to spread. Our success may have required their sacrifice. The quiet hybrid species. This reframes the story. Modern humans are not purely Homo sapiens. We are hybrids. A lighter, more flexible cognitive species layered on top of a deeper, older survival architecture. The mind accelerated. The body borrowed. Why this matters? If Neanderthals were truly inferior, evolution would have erased them completely. It didn't. It kept what worked, which suggests Neanderthals were not a failure. They were a foundation. And foundations are invisible only after something rises on top of them. When humans traded muscle for mind, the exchange was not free. It bought us dominance, but it also introduced a new kind of fragility. Not physical, existential. The body was once the limit. For most of evolutionary history, the body enforced balance. You could only hunt so much, only travel so far, only consume what your muscles could extract. Physical limits restrained ambition. Neanderthals lived inside those limits. Their strength was real, but finite. Their footprint on the world was heavy, yet local. Humans broke that contract. Once intelligence externalized strength into tools, the body stopped being the bottleneck. And nothing replaced it. Runaway abstraction. Human cognition is uniquely capable of abstraction detached from consequence. We can design systems without feeling their impact, make decisions at scales our instincts cannot comprehend, optimize for short-term gains while ignoring long-term collapse. Our brains evolved for tribal life and immediate feedback, not global systems, climate cycles, or exponential growth. This mismatch is dangerous. Neanderthals did not face it. Their intelligence was embodied, anchored to muscle, environment, and consequence. Ours floats. The disembodiment problem. As tools improved, bodies weakened. As bodies weakened, tools improved faster. The feedback loop reversed direction. Modern humans sit more than move, think more than feel, simulate more than experience. We live increasingly inside representations of the world rather than the world itself. Strength once kept intelligence honest. Without it, ideas can grow without friction. The psychological cost. Many uniquely human conditions cluster around this trade-off. Chronic anxiety, depression, dissociation, existential dread. These are not merely social failures. They are evolutionary side effects. A brain optimized for planning futures is haunted by futures it cannot control. Neanderthals likely feared immediate threats. Humans fear possibility. Wisdom lag. Our intelligence scaled faster than our wisdom. Wisdom requires long feedback loops, cultural restraint, embodied understanding. Technology accelerates faster than culture can adapt. Every generation inherits tools their nervous systems were never designed to handle. The body can't keep up. The forgotten strength. There is a quiet irony here. In becoming dominant, humans became dependent. Dependent on technology, energy systems, social complexity. Remove those supports, and modern humans struggle where Neanderthals would have endured. Strength did not disappear. It was outsourced. A dangerous trajectory. The same process that replaced Neanderthals is still running. Each generation becomes physically weaker, more abstract, more technologically dependent. This is not necessarily bad, but it is unstable. A species that forgets its body risks losing the grounding that keeps intelligence survivable. The unspoken question: if humans were engineered, or even just accelerated by chance, was wisdom supposed to catch up later? Or was the experiment always meant to test how far intelligence could run before collapsing under its own abstraction? Because strength once kept us human, and we gave it up willingly. We tend to tell the story of human evolution as a victory. Smarter replaced stronger. Flexible replaced specialized. Civilization replaced survival. But that framing assumes a single definition of progress. And nature rarely agrees. A different kind of intelligence. Neanderthals did not lack intelligence. They lacked acceleration. Their intelligence was slow, embodied, and deeply ecological. It responded to immediate realities: weather, terrain, animals, injury, kin. They lived inside feedback loops that were short and unforgiving. If a hunt failed, you felt it. If the climate shifted, you adapted or died. If a tool was poorly made, it broke in your hands. There was no abstraction buffer. That may have been a form of wisdom. Stability over growth. Neanderthals persisted for over 300,000 years. That is not failure. That is stability. Modern Homo sapiens, by contrast, have existed in our current form for a fraction of that time, and have already altered the planet's climate, ecosystems, and extinction rates. One species endured. The other exploded. Which one was more balanced? Local mastery versus global disruption. Neanderthals mastered specific environments. They did not attempt to dominate the world. Their populations stayed within the carrying capacity of their landscapes. Their technologies plateaued, not because they couldn't innovate, but because they didn't need to. Human innovation rarely stops at enough. We optimize beyond necessity, and optimization without limits becomes extraction. The myth of inevitability. It is tempting to say Neanderthals were doomed. But that assumes our trajectory was the only possible one. What if climate fluctuations had been gentler? Human populations had stayed smaller? Cultural acceleration had slowed? Neanderthals might still be here. Progress is not destiny. It is path-dependent. A species that didn't break the world. Neanderthals hunted megafauna, but they did not wipe it out. They used fire, but did not terraform continents. They altered landscapes, but did not destabilize them. Their strength imposed limits. Our intelligence removed them. The uncomfortable mirror. When we call Neanderthals primitive, we are often defending ourselves. Because their world was harsh, but coherent. Ours is powerful, but fragile. A system optimized for growth is brittle. A system optimized for survival is resilient. Neanderthals chose resilience. We chose reach. What we lost. In replacing Neanderthals, humanity may have lost embodied awareness, ecological humility, physical self-sufficiency, natural braking mechanisms on expansion. We gained the stars, but we lost the ground beneath our feet. The question progress avoids. If a species survives for hundreds of thousands of years without collapsing, is that less advanced, or simply wiser? There is a way to invert the story that almost never gets told. Instead of asking why Neanderthals failed, ask why we look unfinished. Because when you strip away the myth of progress, Neanderthals appear oddly complete. The baseline hypothesis. Imagine evolution not as a race upward, but as a search for stability. In that framework, Neanderthals make sense. They were physically robust enough to survive injury, cognitively capable enough to coordinate and plan, socially bonded enough to care for the vulnerable, ecologically constrained enough to avoid runaway expansion. They were not trying to escape nature. They were embedded in it. Modern humans, by contrast, feel like a system pushed past equilibrium. More intelligence than restraint. More abstraction than embodiment. More reach than grounding. Which raises a radical possibility. What if Neanderthals weren't a failed experiment? What if they were the first stable solution? Derivative design versus original balance. In engineering, an original model is often overbuilt, durable, and conservative. Later versions become lighter, faster, more specialized, but also more fragile. Modern humans resemble a performance-optimized variant. Less muscle, less bone, less redundancy. In exchange, faster learning, higher abstraction, greater adaptability. But adaptability is not the same as resilience. Neanderthals could lose tools and survive. Modern humans lose systems and collapse. The body as regulator. Neanderthal bodies enforced limits. You could not travel endlessly, extract infinitely, scale population without consequence. The body was the governor. In humans, that governor was removed. Technology replaced muscle. Culture replaced instinct. Abstraction replaced consequence. This made us powerful, but unregulated. If engineering happened, it would look like this. If, hypothetically, an external intelligence were experimenting with hominins, the progression would make sense. Stable, embodied species, Neanderthal-like. Lighter, faster cognitive variant, Homo sapiens. Let culture evolve faster than biology. Observe outcomes. You don't start with the volatile version. You derive it. And you don't intervene again once self-modification begins. Why keep Neanderthals at all? If Neanderthals were obsolete, why did they persist so long alongside us? Because they weren't obsolete. They were compatible. Interbreeding preserved their best traits, suggesting they were not an evolutionary mistake, but a support layer. We didn't overwrite them. We cannibalized stability. A sobering thought. If Neanderthals were the original model, then modern humanity is not the culmination. We are a test case. A version tuned for speed over balance. And test cases are not meant to last forever. They are meant to reveal limits. The mirror turns back on us. So perhaps the real question isn't, why did Neanderthals disappear? But, what happens to a species that abandons strength, grounding, and embodied limits, and replaces them with intelligence alone? Because if this was an experiment, we are still in the middle of it. If intelligence replaced strength once, it may now be doing something stranger. It may be detaching from the body entirely. And that raises a question evolution has never had to answer before. What happens when intelligence no longer needs biology at all? The vanishing body. For the first time in human history, physical strength is no longer correlated with survival. Food arrives without hunting. Shelter stands without building. Movement is optional. Many humans now live lives where their bodies are not tested, not even lightly. From an evolutionary standpoint, this is unprecedented. Neanderthals were tested daily. Early humans were tested constantly. Modern humans are tested abstractly, through stress, deadlines, symbols, and screens. The body waits. Unused. Are we regressing or redirecting? From one perspective, humans are becoming physically weaker. Bone density declines. Muscle mass shrinks. Metabolic disorders rise. This looks like regression. But evolution does not care about appearance. It cares about function. If strength is no longer required, it will not be maintained. Instead, selection pressure shifts toward cognitive endurance, stress tolerance, information processing, emotional regulation. The arena has moved. The rise of synthetic strength. At the same time, strength hasn't disappeared. It has been externalized again. Machines lift what humans cannot. Robots endure what bodies cannot. Exoskeletons replace muscle. We are rebuilding Neanderthal strength. But in metal, not flesh. This is not regression. It is translation. A fork in the evolutionary road. From here, three futures are plausible. Re-embodiment. Humans deliberately reclaim physicality, fitness, resilience, embodied living, as a corrective to abstraction. Full externalization. Bodies become vestigial. Strength, labor, even survival are outsourced to machines. Hybridization. Biological humans integrate with technology, augmenting strength, endurance, and cognition beyond natural limits. Each path abandons Neanderthal biology in a different way. Only one retains it. Why the Neanderthal question still matters. Neanderthals remind us of something uncomfortable. A species can be intelligent without escaping its body. They were strong, aware, grounded, and limited. Limits protected them. Modern humans removed those limits, and are now scrambling to invent new ones. The risk of disembodied intelligence. Intelligence without physical feedback becomes speculative. Plans no longer hurt when they fail. Decisions no longer cost energy. Errors no longer scar the body. This is dangerous. Neanderthals learned through pain and recovery. Humans increasingly learn through simulation. Simulations forgive mistakes reality does not. An evolutionary irony. The more intelligent we become, the more we must consciously choose to remain embodied. What was once automatic, strength, movement, grounding, now requires intention. This is not progress. It is responsibility. The shadow of the past. Perhaps Neanderthals were not meant to be replaced. Perhaps they were meant to be remembered. As a warning. As a reference point. As proof that intelligence does not have to abandon the body to survive. At the edge of every long investigation, the same question waits. Not what happened, but why this path, and not another. Because when we survey the full arc, Neanderthal strength, human abstraction, runaway intelligence, the outcome feels less like a smooth climb and more like a deflection. As if something gently pushed the wheel. Chance is powerful, but it has a signature. Natural evolution is messy. It produces redundancies, dead ends, inefficiencies. Yet the rise of Homo sapiens shows an unusual coherence. Endurance over strength. Symbolism over embodiment. Scalability over stability. These traits align too neatly with long-term planetary dominance. That doesn't prove guidance, but it complicates pure accident. The nudge hypothesis, not creation. If we bring the alien hypothesis back in its weakest, most restrained form, it doesn't look like gods or laboratories. It looks like selection pressure applied at the right moment. A nudge could be introducing a gene variant that prolongs childhood, altering neural connectivity thresholds, encouraging social tolerance at scale. After that, evolution takes over. No further interference required. The system runs itself. Why the nudge would be invisible? Any sufficiently advanced intervention would hide inside natural processes. No alien DNA. No foreign markers. No fingerprints. Just outcomes that look slightly improbable, but not impossible. That is exactly where humans sit. Not miraculous. Just unlikely. Why Neanderthals matter here. Neanderthals show us the path not taken. They demonstrate that intelligence could have remained embodied, slow, and stable. Humans diverged sharply. That divergence is the mystery. If aliens wanted observers, miners, or servants, humans are poorly designed. But if they wanted a species that would self-organize, self-modify, expand without further input, then humans are ideal. A single nudge produces exponential outcomes. The risk of over-attribution. But there is a danger here. Attributing everything to guidance removes responsibility. If we were nudged, it does not excuse where we are now. The path after the nudge, if it existed, was still ours to walk. Every extinction, every weapon, every abstraction. No one else made those choices. The more disturbing possibility. What if no one nudged us? What if the universe simply allows rare configurations where intelligence escapes embodiment, and we are watching one of them burn bright? That possibility is more unsettling than aliens, because it means this pattern could be common. And brief. The narrow balance point. Whether by chance or guidance, humans crossed a threshold. Intelligence began evolving faster than wisdom. Technology began outpacing biology. Abstraction detached from consequence. Neanderthals never crossed that line. We did. And once crossed, there is no clear return. the question that remains. So we are left with two equally sobering conclusions. If we were nudged, then we are an experiment that has reached its most dangerous phase. If we were not, then intelligence itself is unstable, and civilization is a temporary flare. In both cases, strength alone would not have saved us. Only balance might. At the end of this long comparison, bones, brains, genes, primates, and possibility, we are left not with an answer, but with a pattern. Strength endures. Intelligence accelerates. Balance determines survival. And no species embodies that tension more clearly than the ones we've traced. Neanderthals, strength anchored to reality. Neanderthals lived close to consequence. Their strength was not symbolic, it was felt. Their intelligence was not abstract, it was embodied. Every decision passed through muscle, weather, injury, hunger. They survived not because they dominated the world, but because they did not attempt to escape it. For hundreds of thousands of years, they persisted. Not loudly, not expansively, but steadily. That matters. Humans, intelligence that refused to stay grounded. Humans chose a different trade. We reduced muscle. We lightened bone. We extended childhood and memory. In exchange, we gained something unprecedented, a mind that could leave the body behind. That single shift changed everything. It allowed us to store strength in tools, store memory in culture, store survival outside biology. It also allowed us to forget limits. Other primates, warnings in parallel. Chimpanzees show us intelligence without scale. Bonobos show us cooperation without pressure. Gorillas show us strength without flexibility. Orangutans show us foresight without networks. Each is viable. None is explosive. Only humans crossed into runaway complexity. Not because we were best, but because the pieces aligned just right. Or just wrong. What evolution actually preserves. Evolution does not reward greatness. It rewards fit. Neanderthals fit their world. Other primates fit theirs. Humans reshaped the world to fit themselves. That works, until it doesn't. A species that must constantly rebuild its environment to survive is powerful, but brittle. The future is the final comparison. Now we stand at a point no other primate, no Neanderthal, no ancestor ever reached. We no longer compete with animals. We compete with our own abstractions, our own technologies, our own acceleration. Strength cannot solve this. Intelligence alone already created it. Only restraint, chosen, not enforced, remains. What might actually survive? Perhaps survival does not belong to the strongest body, the fastest mind, the most advanced tools. Perhaps it belongs to the species or version of us that remembers something ancient, that intelligence evolved inside a body for a reason, that limits are not flaws, that grounding is not regression, the quiet ending. Neanderthals are gone, but not erased. They remain in our genes, in our pain thresholds, in our capacity to endure. They are the reminder that another path existed, one that did not burn so brightly, one that may have lasted longer. No verdict, only clarity. We do not end with answers, only with a final comparison. Strength without intelligence survives quietly. Intelligence without balance accelerates dangerously. Balance, rare, unglamorous, embodied, may be the hardest trait to evolve, and perhaps the only one that truly lasts.